She was 26 the night her life split into two. London, 1943. A city beating beneath blackout curtains, where secrets traveled faster than the wind and trust could kill faster than a bullet. Her code name was Wren. Her mission was simple on paper, impossible in reality. She had been trained for deception. Trained to steal information, not hearts. Trained to disappear into crowds, to blend into cafes, to slip through the cracks of occupied Europe like smoke. For months she operated in the shadows of neutral Lisbon, a crossroads where spies from every nation circled each other like wary dancers. And then one winter evening, she spotted him inside a dim cafe, a German officer, not in uniform, but unmistakably an elite intelligence handler. Sharp eyes, quiet posture, a man who carried secrets the way others carried cigarettes. He was her target. He was also the first man to make her hesitate. Their meeting began with calculated steps, her smile rehearsed, his suspicion controlled. She approached him under false pretenses. He allowed her near because he needed someone who wasn't afraid of Berlin's long reach. Both believed they were playing each other. But war's twist lives in ways training manuals never mention. On their third meeting, while mapping out coded microfilms and courier routes, something shifted. He asked a simple question, one that German officers rarely asked their informants. "Are you afraid?" She almost laughed. She had been afraid every day for 3 years. But the worry in his voice was real, unguarded, dangerously human. That was the night she realized she had crossed a line that spies are never supposed to cross. This wasn't an asset anymore. This wasn't a mission. This was a man she was beginning to care for. A British agent. A German officer. Two enemies tied together by a fragile thread that could snap with a single whisper. She knew the rules. She knew the consequences. She also knew she wasn't going to stop. Because even in war, some truths refuse to die. Long before she became Wren, she was Evelyn Hart, a bright, sharp-minded linguist from Surrey who grew up listening to her mother's radio broadcasts and her father's quiet discussions about the rising storm in Europe. She had a gift for languages and an even rarer gift for reading people. When war broke out, those skills made her valuable long before she realized it herself. By 1941, the Special Operations Executive had recruited her. Her training was swift, intense, and unforgiving. Code breaking, disguise,
rapid memorization,
dead drops and cover stories, charts of German ranks until she could recognize them by silhouette alone. The SOE believed strongly in one principle: women could go where men could not. They were overlooked, underestimated, invisible in the most useful way. Evelyn learned to use that invisibility like a weapon. She carried messages sewn inside hems of dresses and memorized intelligence reports like poems. Each mission pushed her deeper into the war's underground web. By the time she reached Lisbon in late 1942, she was no longer a novice. She was part of a sprawling shadow network, one that stretched from London to Madrid to the ruins of Warsaw. Lisbon, officially neutral, had become a crossroads of spies, refugees, diplomats, double agents, smugglers, and dreamers trying to escape the war's grip. The city lived in a strange twilight. Ships from both sides docked in its harbors. German agents drank in the same cafes as British officers. Secrets flowed like wine, traded in whispers and glances. Evelyn's assignment centered around a single target: a German intelligence officer operating under civilian cover. Berlin depended on him to manage information routes flowing out of France and the Low Countries. His sources were reliable, his channels discreet, his movements predictable enough to track, until he wasn't. His name, classified in London, was irrelevant to her cover. To him, she introduced herself as a drifting translator seeking better opportunities. She hinted at friends in diplomatic circles. She claimed to know how to move papers without questions. In a world where everyone lied, her lies were carefully crafted to feel truthful. The SOE handlers warned her sternly: "He is valuable. He is dangerous. Do not get close unless you control the closeness." But controlling closeness was never simple when survival depended on appearing genuine. Evelyn first approached him at the Café Aurora, a dimly lit place favored by people who wanted privacy without hiding. The cafe smelled of strong coffee and sea air that drifted in through open windows. She made sure to pass by his table twice before asking if she could sit in the seat across from him, pretending all other seats were taken. He looked at her with the caution of a man who saw traps everywhere. "That depends," he said. "Are you someone who enjoys conversation, or someone who wants to avoid it?" She smiled, knowing this was the first test. "Conversation," she replied, "but only with someone interesting." That earned a faint, reluctant smirk, the kind that told her she had made the right first move. Over the next week, their meetings unfolded naturally, or so she made it seem. She'd casually mention shipments, routes, or news from France, using fragments of real intelligence provided by London. He offered guarded comments, small hints, careful questions. He wanted information but was too experienced to appear desperate for it. Evelyn reported each detail back to her handler, who monitored everything from microfilm contacts to hotel ledgers. At this stage, she was still doing her job, efficiently, professionally, but something slowly shifted. It began with the way he observed her, not as a pawn or informant, but as someone whose presence stirred a reaction he couldn't afford to show. His questions became less strategic and more personal. How long had she been in Lisbon? Was she alone? Did she miss home? These were not questions a German officer asked lightly. Not in a city where trust could be suicide. Evelyn responded cautiously, crafting answers that revealed just enough vulnerability to deepen the connection, but not enough to compromise her mission. She told herself it was all part of the game. But then came the night she returned to her hotel room to find a note slipped beneath her door. A short line written in careful handwriting. "Be careful. Someone is watching you." No signature. No explanation. But she recognized the handwriting instantly. It was his. She froze in the middle of the room, the weight of the note sinking into her chest. This wasn't manipulation. This wasn't strategy. It was protection. And protection was personal. In that moment she understood. The lines were blurring. Control was slipping. Her mission was becoming something far more dangerous than London had prepared her for. The warning note changed everything. Evelyn sat on the edge of her hotel bed, reading it again and again, as if the meaning might shift under the lamplight. She had played dangerous games before, but this, coming from the very man she was meant to manipulate, felt different. It wasn't calculated. It wasn't coded. It was a risk taken by someone who should have let her walk straight into danger. And that meant someone else had mocked her. Her handler, stationed in a cramped safe house several streets away, reacted with immediate concern when she reported the message. "London cannot authorize emotional entanglement," he warned. "You are there to gather intelligence, not hearts." "I'm not entangled," she lied. He gave her a long, knowing look. "You're not the first agent to say that. And you won't be the first destroyed by it." Evelyn left without promising anything. The next time she met the German officer, it was at dusk along the waterfront. He watched her as though expecting her to confront him about the note. But she didn't. Instead, she mirrored his guarded expression, matching him in restraint. "You've been quiet," he said, leaning against the railing overlooking the harbor. "Some days require silence," she replied. He nodded, accepting the answer, though clearly sensing more beneath it. Their conversations had shifted subtly over the past week. Less probing, more honest. He shared small frustrations about Berlin's bureaucracy, about orders issued by men far from danger. She talked about childhood memories, carefully selected ones that shaped a believable persona. Each confession was a door cracked open. One evening, he disclosed something unexpected. "I dislike this war," he said quietly. "All it has created is a generation of widows and orphans." It wasn't the sort of thing a loyal officer admitted lightly. Evelyn sensed a fracture inside him, a line running through the armor he wore around the Reich. She pushed gently. "Then why remain in intelligence?" He hesitated. "Because leaving is a death sentence." That was the first moment she saw him clearly. Not just as a target, but as a man trapped by the machinery he served. As their connection deepened, so did the stakes. One night, as she left their usual cafe, a shadow followed her along the street. The figure moved deliberately, neither hurried nor hesitant. She increased her pace. So did he. She turned a corner. He turned with her. She ducked into a crowded tavern, pretending to search for someone, blending into the smoke-filled room. Blood pounded in her ears. When she glanced back out the window, the shadow was still waiting. Whoever he wasn't British. And he wasn't German. That left only rival networks. Spanish agents, Soviet observers, or independent hunters who sold secrets to the highest bidder. Lisbon had plenty of those. She waited 30 minutes before slipping out the back entrance. The next morning, she found the German officer already seated at the cafe, unusually tense. The moment she sat down, he leaned forward. "You're being followed." She kept her face unreadable. "I noticed. Not by my people," he added. "This is something else." "Why warn me?" she asked. His jaw tightened. "Because whoever they are, they kill without hesitation." For a moment, neither spoke. The weight between them grew heavy with unspoken truths. Finally he said, "Stop meeting me. It's safer." Evelyn heard the fear under the words, and it startled her. He was trying to protect her, even though it endangered him. "No," she replied softly. "We continue, but carefully." He stared at her, searching for the reason behind her resolve. She didn't give it. Not yet. London's demands, however, grew more aggressive. Her next coded transmission brought an order she had been dreading. Extract everything he knows about German naval movements. Full access. Use emotional leverage if necessary. London didn't care about her safety. Or his. They cared about intelligence. She felt the air leave her chest as she read it. She was officially being asked to break him. 2 nights later, they met in a quieter district, a rooftop terrace overlooking the city. The lights of Lisbon shimmered beneath them like 1,000 unkept promises. He sensed something was different. "You're distant," he said. "What did London tell you?" She should have lied. She should have laughed it off. But the truth pressed painfully at her throat. "They want information on naval movements," she admitted. His shoulders stiffened, the atmosphere shifting immediately. "Of course they do. They want me to use whatever connection we have." He looked away, jaw clenching. "And are you going to?" "I don't know," she whispered. That was the first honest thing she had said in days. His voice was low. "You could ruin me with a single report. And you could expose me with a single whisper," she replied. Their eyes locked. The unspoken admission hovered between them. They were both in love with someone they should have feared. He exhaled a long, breaking breath. "You're not safe here. You haven't been for weeks. Whoever follows you, they're not amateurs." "Do you know who they are?" "Yes," he said reluctantly. "And if I tell you, you'll think I'm manipulating you." "Tell me anyway." "Soviet agents," he answered. "They are hunting British operatives. You're a target of opportunity." A chill ran through her. He wasn't lying. Not this time. That night, he made a decision that changed everything. He reached into his coat and handed her a small notebook, handwritten figures, convoy schedules, officer transfers. Information so valuable it could shatter German naval strategy. Her breath caught. "You're giving me this?" "Yes." "Why?" His answer was barely above a whisper. "Because I trust you more than I trust Berlin." Evelyn felt something inside her break open, relief, fear, and emotion she had no training to control. This was the intelligence London demanded. But taking it meant sealing his fate. She closed the notebook slowly. "If they discover this..." "They won't," he said. "I made sure there are no copies." "You're risking treason." He looked into her eyes. "And you're risking execution." They stood on the edge of a choice neither could undo. 2 enemies. 1 secret. A love that could destroy them both. Evelyn left the rooftop with it hidden beneath her coat, every step echoing with the understanding that she was now holding a man's life in her hands. Not an enemy's. Not a target's. His. The streets of Lisbon blurred as she walked, the shadows stretching long and thin as if trying to warn her that something irreversible had begun. Her handler reacted instantly when she delivered the intelligence. "This is extraordinary," he whispered, almost reverently. "High-level naval schedules. Officer transfers. God, London will devour this." He looked up at her, sharp-eyed. "How did you acquire it?" She hesitated for half a heartbeat too long. "Source trust," she said. "Be careful, Evelyn." His voice darkened. "Trust is a luxury we don't have." She left the safe house uneasy. It wasn't the warning that unsettled her, it was the realization that London would now tighten the screws. They would expect more. They would push harder. They would assume she had complete control over her German source. They had no idea how much he had already risked. 2 nights later, the danger erupted without warning. Evelyn stood outside her hotel when a hand clamped around her wrist and dragged her into a narrow alley. She spun, ready to fight, but froze when she saw his face. The German officer. His expression was carved with fear, something she had never seen on him. "You need to leave Lisbon," he said urgently. "Now." "What happened?" "They're on to you," he said. "The Soviets. And Berlin suspects someone in our network leaked naval data. They're questioning every handler, every courier. I can't keep covering for you." Her stomach dropped. "What did you do?" "Enough to buy you hours. Not days." "You risked." "Don't talk about risk," he snapped quietly. "Not when you walk the streets with executioners behind you." She grasped his arm. "Come with me." It was the first time she'd said it aloud. The truth she had buried under duty and discipline. His eyes softened, just for a second, then hardened again. "You know I can't. You'll be arrested." "I know. You'll be shot." He didn't answer. Her pulse hammered painfully. The war had torn millions apart, but now it felt like it had narrowed itself to a single impossible question. How do 2 enemies walk away together when the world insists they remain on opposite sides? He pulled her deeper into the alley, hidden from the street. "Listen to me," he said. "There's a ship leaving at dawn. A British courier vessel disguised as a supply transport. Be on it." "And you?" He breathed in slowly. "I need to return to my post. If I disappear now, they'll assume the leak was mine." "It was," she whispered. He nodded. "But Berlin doesn't know that." She felt her throat tighten. "I'm not leaving you." He placed his hands on her shoulders. Gentle, steady, final. "You are," he said. "Because you're the only person I've ever trusted. And trust means I want you alive." Her chest ached with a grief she hadn't prepared for. Spies were trained to sacrifice many things, but not like this. Not someone who had given her more honesty than some allies ever had. She clutched his coat. "Please don't go back to them." A long silence stretched between them. Then he said the words she feared most. "If I run, it confirms everything. They'll hunt me, they'll hunt you, and anyone who ever spoke to me will suffer." Evelyn felt the weight of his truth. He wasn't trying to be a martyr. He was trying to shield her from a storm he could no longer outrun. Footsteps echoed at the far end of the alley. Heavy, purposeful. "Soviets." He stiffened. "Go." But she stayed frozen, torn between instinct and emotion. He pulled her close, pressing his forehead to hers for the briefest moment, an intimacy stolen from a world that didn't allow it. Then he pushed her toward the opposite exit. "Run." The footsteps grew louder. She hesitated only once, long enough to see him turn toward the danger, shoulders straight, face calm, as if this was always how his story was meant to end. Then she sprinted into the night. Hours later, Evelyn boarded the ship at dawn. The harbor was quiet, the fog clinging low over the water. She stood near the rail as the vessel pulled away, Lisbon shrinking behind her. Her heart felt impossibly heavy, because she knew what she had left behind wasn't just a source, not just a man. It was the other half of a truth neither of them had been allowed to live. She didn't know if he'd survive the interrogation. She didn't know if he'd ever be free again. She didn't know if he'd think she abandoned him. But she carried the last words he gave her, unspoken yet unmistakable. Survive. For both of us. The coastline faded, and with it, the life she could never return to. The ship carried Evelyn back toward Britain, but her heart remained in the narrow alleyways of Lisbon. Every wave that struck the hull felt like a reminder of the rooftop nights, the traded secrets, the moments of dangerous honesty between two people born on opposite sides of a war they never chose. When she arrived in London, her handler greeted her with a cold professionalism that made the world feel suddenly smaller. "You've done exceptional work," he said. "Your intelligence changed the Admiralty's entire Atlantic strategy." She waited for the question she dreaded. "And the German officer?" Her silence was her answer. The handler merely nodded. "His fate is irrelevant now. The war shifts. We adapt. That's how this works." But Evelyn wasn't sure she wanted to adapt. Not anymore. She filed her final report. She listened to briefings. She resumed her duties. But every message she decoded, every courier she trained, every mission she assisted, each felt hollow, as though she were moving through the war as a ghost. She asked for updates about Lisbon. There were none. Requests for field intelligence came back with vague statements. German internal security tightened, network disrupted, several arrests reported. Nothing with a name. Nothing with certainty. Nothing about him. And that was the final cruelty of intelligence work. Sometimes you never learn the end of the story you were part of. Germany surrendered 2 years later. Europe breathed, rebuilt, mourned. London celebrated with street parades and flags. Evelyn stood among the crowds but felt none of it. Wars end loudly. Grief ends quietly. In the years that followed, she built a life around the things she still understood. Languages, diplomacy, quiet rooms where negotiations mattered more than bullets. She married once, briefly, but the marriage dissolved under the weight of things she could never explain. On a late spring afternoon, long after the world had moved on, she received an envelope postmarked from Switzerland. Inside was a single sheet of paper with a short message. "I survived. I hope you did too." No signature. No address. Just closure wrapped in uncertainty, enough to make her sit down and steady her breath. She pressed the letter to her chest, eyes closing as years of doubt eased. He had lived. Somehow. Against all odds. She read the message one more time before placing it in a small wooden box. The only place she kept her true memories of the war. The world would never know their story. The history books would never mention it. But some wars are fought in shadows. And some loves survive only in silence. In the quiet that followed, she realized this. Even in the darkest corners of conflict, two hearts can find each other, and carry that truth for a lifetime.